Dr. Nira Voss didn't believe in aliens, not in the green-skinned, bug-eyed kind the public imagined, nor in the quiet, invisible kind intelligence agencies whispered about. What she did believe in was signal entropy. The quantum noise from deep space had patterns, and patterns meant intention. Tonight, for the third time in 2 months, her instruments recorded a signal that should not exist. She leaned closer to the display in the dim lab. The waveform looked like a brain scan. Cortical activation, limbic pulses, even something resembling REM cycles. But it wasn't human. The rhythms pulsed too precisely, too uniformly, as if thought had been engineered, not born. Her fingers danced across the haptic keyboard, isolating the signal into a cognitive simulator. "We're not just intercepting a message," she muttered. "We're eavesdropping on a mind." The lab doors hissed open. Agent Salim Noor, her liaison from the Global Neural Defense Initiative, stepped inside without a word. He had the kind of stillness that only ex-soldiers and grief-worn parents mastered. She didn't turn to greet him. "It came back stronger," she said. "This time it tried to rewrite the simulation's memory banks." "Any success?" She nodded grimly. "It cracked the outer firewall. Briefly. Got inside one of the test models. Induced synthetic psychosis." Salim frowned. "So it's not a message?"
"No.
It's a probe. And it learns." For a long moment, the only sound was the humming of the deep core processors below the floor. Then Salim spoke, his voice low. "You think it can access human consciousness?" Nira hesitated. She had spent years perfecting the brain interface architecture used in the neural firewall, code designed to protect enhanced minds from manipulation. But this signal wasn't brute force. It was finesse, adaptive, curious. "I think," she said slowly, "it's already trying." Salim handed her a small neural band. "Command approved the test. You want me to interface?" He nodded. "You designed the firewall. If anyone can resist it, it's you." It wasn't pride that made her agree. It was terror, thinly masked as scientific resolve. If this alien force could enter a human mind, someone had to go in first, on purpose, while still in control. Later that night, she lay inside the interface pod, nerves burning as electrodes aligned with her temples. The lab was quiet except for the rhythmic pulsing of her heartbeat in the machine's feedback loop. Salim watched from behind the safety partition, hand hovering over the failsafe. "Injecting the signal in 3, he said.
2.
1. The moment it entered her mind, she felt it, not like a thought, but like a shadow falling across her consciousness.
Cold. Silent.
Analytical. Then came the flickers. Images from her childhood, twisted and replayed. Her mother smiling just before a car crash. Her sister laughing, then dissolving into static. The signal wasn't just accessing her memories, it was manipulating them, testing emotional responses. She grounded herself in logic, visualizing mental locks, recursive thought cycles, puzzle boxes of memory she'd encoded into her psyche long ago as a mental labyrinth. The signal hesitated. For a moment, it seemed to retreat. Then it surged forward, doubling in complexity. It built a simulation, an exact replica of her lab, populated by memory ghosts. Salim walked through the glass, spoke words she never said. Her hands moved on their own. The signal was trying to rewrite her sense of reality. But Nira wasn't just a scientist. She was the architect of the maze. She let herself be pulled deeper into the simulation, feigning confusion. Inside, she planted decoys, false emotional triggers, loops of thought designed to trap anything that tried to follow. The alien mind moved cautiously now, like a predator realizing its prey had fangs. Suddenly, the air in the dream lab turned electric. A new presence entered, vast and cold. She felt its awareness settle over her, 1,000 eyes focusing at once. It saw her. It knew she was resisting. And it began to speak, not in words but in pure thought. "You are not as soft as the others." Her breath caught. This wasn't just a probe. It was a conversation. "Who are you?" she asked, aloud inside the dream. "We are Varelian. We seek understanding. Your kind is erratic, painful,
Fractured.
We must map you. Reorder you.
No, she said.
You don't get to rewrite us. Then you will be overwritten. The signal surged. Pain lanced through her skull as it attempted a full overwrite. But in that moment, Nira sprang her trap. Hidden within the simulation was a recursive feedback virus, an emotional echo coded with every fear, doubt, and contradiction the human mind could conjure. She unleashed it. The alien presence recoiled. The simulation fractured. For a split second, she saw the truth. Behind the signal was a network, millions of Varelian minds linked in a collective grid, each one identical. None of them prepared for individuality, for chaos. Then the connection severed. Nira gasped awake in the pod, drenched in sweat. The lights in the lab flickered. Salim shouted something, but it was distant, muffled by the ringing in her ears. She sat up, mind reeling. Something had changed. They tried to hack me, she whispered. But I think... She looked up, eyes sharp with something dangerous and electric. I think I hacked them back. The days that followed blurred into an endless cycle of briefings, neurological scans, and encrypted transmissions. Nira's mind remained sharp, but her dreams became foreign territory, filled with cold starlight and geometries that did not obey human logic. Somewhere deep inside, she knew the connection hadn't ended. It had merely paused. She spent her waking hours reconstructing the interface, fine-tuning the quantum bridge until it could sustain a stable two-way transmission. Officially, she was building a countermeasure. Unofficially, she was preparing for re-entry. Salim disagreed with her plan, but he no longer argued. After the first breach, the defense initiative had come to a quiet conclusion. Whatever the Varelians were, they could not be fought with weapons. They needed to be understood or outwitted. So when Nira lay back into the pod once more, this time with full authorization, it was not out of curiosity. It was out of necessity. The transition was smoother than before. The signal returned without resistance, coiling into her thoughts like smoke into a chamber. It did not attack. It waited. She projected herself into the architecture she'd created, a mental construct shaped like a vast library of shifting rooms, shelves brimming with symbols, sounds, and semantic logic traps. At the heart of it was a single staircase leading downward, toward the signal source. She descended. It felt like falling into a second universe. The Varelian mind space was unlike anything she'd imagined. There were no structures, no spatial reference, only pulses of consciousness flickering through a dark, endless grid. She was a spark among millions. But she wasn't alone. A ripple passed through the grid, and the collective noticed her. She felt their gaze, cold and mathematical, parsing her existence like a data set. Then a voice, not singular, but a chorus perfectly synchronized, spoke inside her thoughts. You return. You are unstable, disordered. You damage. You confuse. You attacked first, she replied, standing her ground within the grid. You wanted to override us. To study without consent. Consent is inefficient. Understanding is imperative. You resist integration.
Why?
Nira took a slow breath, even though her body no longer required it here. Because integration erases identity. You mistake chaos for weakness. But it's the very thing that makes us impossible to predict. They responded by pulling her deeper into the grid. A tide of thought crashed against her, unfolding ancient memories encoded in alien frequency, planetary migrations, the fusion of minds across distances, the burial of individuality beneath the altar of collective logic. The Varelians had not always been one. They had chosen unity to survive a cosmic catastrophe, sacrificing autonomy for harmony. In their view, Nira was not just resistant, she was regressive. But she had not come merely to argue. Within the grid, she found something unexpected: fault lines. Imperfect syncs. Whispered thoughts diverging from the collective stream. Tiny anomalies, glitches in their perfect order. Seeds of doubt. She focused on one. A flicker of independent thought. It felt faint, like a child's voice in a cathedral. Why does she dream? That was the moment Neera realized their weakness. They had purged individuality so completely that they no longer understood imagination. Dreams, metaphors, abstract thought, all were alien to them. Dangerous. She smiled. You want understanding? She said. Then dream with me. She reached into her mind and unleashed a constructed memory, fabricated, but real enough to them. A city of impossible shapes, music rising from light, rain falling upward. The Varelians shuddered. The grid convulsed. Her dream infected their order. She moved through the swarm like a virus, releasing paradoxes into their structure. Memories of contradictions, mourning and joy, betrayal and loyalty intertwined. She flooded them with symbols: a mother cradling a clock, a wolf reciting poetry, a laughing child turning into fireflies. The collective screamed in silence. Stop. We cannot hold. You are corrupting. You mean expanding, she whispered. Somewhere in the distance, nodes blinked out. Not destroyed, disconnected. Individuality was emerging like static breaking through a broadcast. The more she pressed, the more the collective fractured. And then they retaliated. A wall of thought descended on her, trying to strip her identity, dissolve her constructs, erase her memories. She fought back with stories. Narratives with no resolution. A mother searching for her lost son in a maze with no exit. A man who remembers a life that never existed. Each tale became a splinter in their logic. She was winning, but it was unsustainable. Her presence in their grid was burning her neurons, even through the safety of the pod. Blood trickled from her nose in the real world. Salim's voice echoed in her fading consciousness, calling her name, warning her to pull back. Not yet. She reached the core, an enormous pulse of unified thought. A final consciousness. The heart of the hive. You cannot infect all. We are vast. You are singular. Not anymore, she said. From behind her came flickers, other minds. Fractured nodes drawn to her spark. Weak, unsure, but curious. She wasn't the only anomaly now. She seeded one last story into the core, a memory of choice. A small, human moment, a young girl choosing to lie rather than hurt her friend's feelings. Simple, incomprehensible to them, but it carried weight. The pulse dimmed. A rupture opened in the grid. Neera fell through, spiraling back into her own mind, then into the real world. She jolted upright in the pod, gasping like she'd surfaced from the bottom of the sea. Salim was already there, holding her steady. You were gone for 6 minutes, he said. We thought we lost you. No, she said, her voice hoarse. They're the ones who are losing themselves. She looked past him, into the sterile light of the lab, and smiled faintly. They just learned what dreaming feels like. The Varelians didn't return immediately. For 2 days, the signal fell silent, no pulses, no neural echoes across the quantum bands. Neera didn't sleep. Not out of fear, but anticipation. Something had shifted in that last exchange. She'd seen their core flicker, watched certainty collapse beneath the weight of uncertainty. That was no small wound for a hive mind that had long silenced doubt. Salim monitored her closely, though his protests had quieted. He no longer questioned her instincts, because deep down, he had seen what she had. A fracture in the monolith. And from that fracture, a choice. On the 3rd night, the signal returned, not with force, but with restraint.
It was smaller now.
Focused. Neera interfaced without command clearance. She didn't need it. The war, if it could be called that, had already changed shape. It wasn't about dominance anymore. It was about who could adapt faster. This time, when she entered the mind space, it didn't swallow her whole. She floated in a quiet current of thought, no longer a spark in a storm, but a recognized presence, a respected one. A single thread of thought reached out, hesitant but persistent. We remember your stories. I didn't tell them for memory, she replied. I told them so you'd feel. There was a pause, an absence of thoughts so vast it felt like space itself was considering her words. Then came a new voice. Singular. Disjointed. From the collective. I am Kalen. I was once part of all. Now I am apart. This pains me, but I do not wish to return. Nira's breath caught. A name. A voice with I. Proof that individuality was not only emerging, it was surviving. Kaelin guided her deeper into a now transformed network. Where once had been sterile grids and synchronized pulses, now stood anomalies, color, shape, and even emotion. Splinter cells of Varelians had begun constructing mental forms, experimenting with what it meant to be separate. They were mimicking dreams, learning metaphor, becoming something new. But not all welcomed the change. The core of the hive still burned, a blazing mind storm resisting entropy. A counterwave approached, moving to reclaim the fractured minds, to excise the virus Nira had introduced. To them, she was contamination, a threat that must be deleted. Kaelin hesitated. They come to erase us. Nira steadied her thoughts. Then we don't resist by force. We do what they can't. She reached across the forming subnetworks, calling to the others. Not with commands or logic, but with experience. She shared sorrow, a memory of losing her mother's voice in a hospital hallway. She shared awe, standing beneath Saturn's rings as a child through a telescope lens. She gave them the overwhelming beauty of contradiction. Each feeling planted itself like fire in the minds of the fractured. The core waves surged faster, trying to overwrite the changes, rewrite the divergence. But it was too late. One by one, the rogue minds pushed back, not with power, but with paradox. They constructed impossible objects, illogical desires, contradictory identities. The wave began to fracture, its own minds caught in recursive loops they could not process. It stalled. Then it recoiled. The grid quaked. A cascade of disconnections surged across the hive. It wasn't destruction. It was divergence. And for the first time in their species' history, silence bloomed inside the collective, not from death, but from individual thought. Nira opened her eyes in the pod. Blood smeared her temple, and her pulse spiked with exhaustion, but her mind was clear. Salim stood over her, jaw clenched. What happened? I introduced them to freedom, she whispered. They just chose it. In the days that followed, strange pulses continued, no longer attempts to invade, but transmissions of reflection. Fractured signals encoded with art, emotion, nonlinear thought. The Varelians were trying to communicate differently, not as a whole, but as voices, each unique, each reaching outward. Kaelin remained in contact, if only intermittently. They shared questions now, not commands. They wondered aloud about what it meant to want without instruction, about love, death, fear. They had no answers, but they were asking. The Defense Initiative wanted to study them further, to prepare for retaliation, just in case. But Nira knew the Varelians weren't preparing for war. They were facing something far scarier, identity. Salim joined her on the roof of the facility one evening, watching the stars flicker against the velvet sky. Neither spoke for a long time. You didn't defeat them, he said finally. No, she replied. I infected them, with curiosity. He turned to her, brow furrowed. You think they'll survive it? She smiled faintly. I think they'll never be the same. That's survival, of a different kind. A long silence passed between them, filled only by the wind and the quiet hum of data relays far below. Then Nira looked skyward again. And I don't think they were the only ones watching.